Hello, everyone. Are you here with me today? If you are here with me, let's see if you can see my screen. We're doing some checks here, making sure you can see everything. So can you see everything? Ian?
Yep, just muted.
Okay, doing some testing. Testing one, two, three, everyone. Well, this is week 3 of the Accelerated Coaching Series. So this one is called the Enhanced Rapport Formula. And let me just start by saying this assumes, and I'm going to assume, that you have gone through Accelerator at least to the point of step 2. And step 2 is the vital connection. We're going to go into step 2 in a little bit. We'll go over the actual, excuse me, the actual nightmare formula in step 2 to answer any specific questions that you have regarding the nightmare formula. But this is something I've developed over the past 6 months or so, and with some help and input from other people. And I call it the enhanced rapport formula. And this is a way of making the nightmare story in Accelerator even more powerful. So you guys will have exclusive training to this in this webinar. And it's a 3-step process. It's pretty simple. And I think you'll get the psychology and the sales strategy in it right off the bat. So let's just dive in. First of all, what's the purpose of changing something we already know works, which is the nightmare story? Well, the purpose of this is to answer objections that your customer may have before telling your nightmare story, before even going into what led you down the road to hell and got you resurrected at the end of the day, so that you can bring him or her this new product, service / idea that is going to help their life. And before, if you haven't gone through this yet, then go through it. Please go through it after this call. If you have gone through it, then you know that what the nightmare formula and the nightmare story is all about. And the most common question that I'm going to address just right off the bat is, what if I don't have a nightmare story? I'm just going to put that one on hold. I am going to address it right now by saying I'm going to put it on hold. Everyone has a nightmare story, either your customer, yourself, preferably, or someone that you know, or it can be a compendium. It can be like a collection of customers that form one fictional story based on truth. You don't want to just make up stuff, obviously, but if you can base, like they do in movies or in books, where they take 3 characters and fuse them into one character. Well, the author or the screenplay writer isn't lying. He's just taking 3 different elements and adding them into one thing. It didn't change the story arc any, right? The same thing goes with truth, where if you do that, like if you take 3 customers and each have a different problem, and then you create one customer, and you can even say, I'm going to give you the story of Jane. Now, Jane is actually a compilation of 3 of my customers, but I think it just makes a perfect story. I'll tell you the story as told through Jane. You can even spell it out if you really want to, but I don't think that you have to. I think that's your artistic liberty. That being said, I really, really, really support the idea of you having your own nightmare formula, your own nightmare story, rather, so that your customer will feel a lot more rapport. If he or she knows that you've gone through worse things that they are, or at least as bad, or right up there, then they're going to be much more apt to listen to you, rather than saying, I'm just an expert in something. And so we're going to assume that you know some of this stuff. And even if you don't, we will go through the nightmare story at the end of this training. But we're just going to tack this on to the start of it. Okay. It's in 3 phases. There's 3 segments to this copy. And I'm giving you an example copy on the next few slides so that you'll be able to get this. It starts off with what I call back in the day. I'm a lot like you. Now, I'm a lot like you is through already Accelerator, but this is where we're going to put it now. And I think it's a pretty cool place to put it. It's a combination of what's called future pacing, which is an NLP, neuro-linguistic programming term that means that you are going to be speaking as if something has already happened in the future. And it's really technically not future pacing. You're just doing it. We're kind of using that as a descriptor rather than an actual thing. When I future pace you, for example, if I was going to future pace you, I would say, right now, I want you to picture this. It's 3 weeks from today, and you're sitting in your desk right where you are right now, and you notice that your bank account has increased. That you look at yourself and you're getting thinner. I would say, I'm future pacing you. That's all I'm doing. I just took you 3 weeks in the future, and I'm talking as if it's the present tense. Look, you look thinner. You feel wealthier. You feel more free. You feel more confident. That's all. I'm not saying you will feel more confident. I'm saying you do. That's future pacing. I set the time frame, then I say all this present tense stuff. That's a very powerful way to convey your message using NLP. This is like future pacing. But the cool little twist of this is you're going to be doing it using the very things that you're going to be teaching your customer or prospect and using yourself. So it's, in a sense, it's future pacing. And you can say things like, just picture yourself a month from now, and you can be, this is the things I was experiencing, this. And then the combination of you and them together is kind of in the future, even though you're talking about something that happened in the past. I know it's a little crazy, but it'll make sense here in a moment. You're going to also solidify, you're going to also, by the way, use a present day success story, meaning present day at the time of you telling the story. And this will all make sense here in just a moment. You will also solidify three of the primary objections that your customer is probably going to have. And you're going to solidify them, and you're going to answer them in a way that's, you're not going to say, so you may be concerned with X. Well, here's the reason why X isn't really a concern. Now, that's your typical way of handling an objection. Let's say that you're selling a stock market product. It doesn't matter what you're selling. Your customer is always going to have objections. And one of the objections might be, well, what happens if the market changes? What happens if when we get a new president and the market changes? Well, here's why you don't have to worry about that. Well, I'm just answering so in other words, I'm coming up with an objection and I'm answering it. Well, what you're going to do is you're going to answer objections they have in their mind without even saying, hey, these are the objections you have. You're going to do this by telling your own story and the fact that you were worried about these objections and that this new information that you got back in the day actually solved that problem. In other words, it just made all the objections kind of go away. And you're going to do it in a very interesting way. You're going to do it by talking about how you were dabbling in this new idea. And this new idea that you're going to tell them about started getting you some good results, okay results. You were saying, hey, I was starting to see some pretty decent results. Nothing spectacular, but pretty decent. So you're setting someone up for a big turn. Now, before we go any further, you may be thinking to yourself, you know what? Well, none of that stuff really happened. And I'm going to challenge you again, because most people I've walked through this exercise before, like one-on-one coaching, at first they're like, well, that's not how it really happened with me. And I would press them to tell their story. And I would say, well, do you see how that was an objection that you had? And do you see how that was you learning some of the stuff that you're teaching now? And he was like, oh yeah, I guess so. So I really want you to consider this stuff and see if you can find it, because it's going to make it really powerful for your customer. The second step is called life was good. This is where you started to see results. So in other words, you started applying some of the things that you were learning back in the day, and this one really big thing, this one really promising thing. So, and again, I love teasing one thing. And one thing really stood out. One thing really was making a difference. I'll tell you about that one thing in a moment. That one thing, by the way, is the hook and USP of your product and service. So that's what the one thing is. And we'll take examples here in a moment. But anyway, we'll just keep going with the details. So despite some results that you were seeing, something tragic happened to you and sent you in a downward spiral. Now, when I mean tragic, it doesn't necessarily mean life or death. Now, in my case, I have a really good tragedy story on both the fitness front and on the internet marketing front. I think that you probably do too. You have something that happened to you that at some point in your life sitting downward, okay? And this is what's really cool about this. It doesn't have to have anything to do with your business. And I'll show you in just a moment, because the I am thing had nothing to do with my business. Now, hint that the one thing really showed promise. And I want you to do that so that you can capitalize on this idea that one thing turned everything around. One thing you're going to discover today that turned my entire business around. You really want that one thing. That's what's working really, really well right now. It's 5 things, 3 things. Those are not nearly as powerful as one thing. Now, that one thing can be given to your customer in 3 tips. I'll give you 3 tips to get this one thing. That's fine. But one thing is something the brain can really latch onto. And you're going to tease it right in the start of your rapport. And normally you would not do this. But again, we're just working through the psychology of this, and it works a lot better. And then the final is called Then It Happened. This is the day or the event or the thing that turned your path toward your current nightmare story. And at this point, you just pick up the nightmare story exactly as it is inside Accelerator. But there's one thing that happened that turned everything, that took you off this promising path and sent you right down the downward spiral. And it was only through going through the downward spiral that you realized how important This one thing really was, when you got to the bottom, you looked up and you go, wow, that one thing was more important than I ever dreamed possible. It was worth overcoming objection A, objection B, objection C. It was worth all of that and then some. And when I finally started applying it, then my life took off and really started making sense. And that, of course, is the end of the nightmare story, where you go back to your current day where you are right now. So that's the 3 steps. It's going to take you into the current nightmare story. It's called the enhanced rapport formula. I'm going to give you specifics now. Back in the day, I'm a lot like you. So this is the copy that I might use if I was writing a video sales letter for Accelerator. And if in case you haven't gone through the course, which I really hope that you have, you certainly should know that I wasn't always known as blank is one of the most popular ways to introduce yourself as an expert. I call it the modest introduction in Accelerator. If you've gone through it, you already know what it is, and it's modest because you're not saying, hi, my name is Jon Benson, and I'm one of the top copywriters in the world, and I do this and I do that. That's even if it's technically correct, and it is, it sounds kind of egotistical to someone that doesn't know you at all. But I've been using this formula for years. When I say, I wasn't always a guy that, so in the fitness world, I would say I wasn't always a guy who actually shot this picture. Yeah, this was me on the cover of a national fitness magazine. I know it's kind of crazy. I definitely wasn't all this way, this guy, and a guy that people would come up to on the street and ask for advice on how to get in shape and how to lose weight. I used to be this guy. And then I showed them the pictures where I was quite obese and unhealthy. So in this particular case, I'm doing the same thing. I'm saying I wasn't always known as the world's top copywriter. I never would have dreamed I would have created $1 billion industry. And that's what video sales letters are. I mean, who would have thunk it? And then at this point is where I would add rapport elements like my failures, my humanity. Here's what's really cool. You can even add stuff that has nothing to do with business. Lewis House just did a great job of this in one of his webinars. He said, I wasn't always, he did say, I wasn't always a guy that people would turn to get internet marketing advice. I actually started off playing semi-professional sports. And this is me back when I was 19. And this is me. I got drafted for this team. And this is me. It's just told a little story. He wasn't saying he was an epic failure at internet marketing. He just told some rapport-based stories. And this is me with my family. So it just makes you feel more human, right? I wasn't always this guy or this girl, and now I personally I wasn't always this guy. I used to suck. I used to really be bad at this, and then I will tell a story my first sales, when I first tried to write sales copy for my second fitness book, it bombed completely. And I thought I was completely good. I thought I was going to be destitute, man. I thought I was going to be in and out. Like I was a quick hit. That I was going to have to give away 50% of all my revenue like I did on my first book, for the rest of my life, to people to write copy. And it would have been worth it, but I really wanted to figure out how to do this on my own. But so I used to, I sucked at it. So that's just one way of saying, hey, I'm a lot like you. I'm not saying that you suck at something. I'm saying that, hey, I've been down the road that you're going on. And I've been on the road of not knowing what to do next, not knowing what to write next. Completely understand that. And then I really, again, love to say things like, I wasn't always this guy, I started off actually as a graphic designer, which is true. And, I just remember, here's my little shop, little picture of my shop back in Dallas, Texas. And here's a picture of my dog, Frazier. And, you can just tell a story like that too. And as long as you don't get too carried away with the family albums and history, because people care only to a point, you seem much more human and likable. And hopefully that is exactly who you really are. So now, then it changes to the story about 7 years ago. Now, can't you just hear this as a narrative for any story that you would tell somebody? It all happened about 7 years ago. That's another way to say it. It all changed about 7 years ago for me. A friend of mine turned me on to one concept, one idea that would change my business, my life, and the way that I thought about marketing forever. So I'm just improvising the words on the screen. Here's the idea. The idea is nothing more important, that there's nothing more important than your sales copy. I was spinning my wheels trying to master social media and trying to get into YouTube and doing all this stuff, when in reality, this guy told me there was nothing more vital than my sales copy. Now, listen to what I'm doing. I start answering objections. And I said, listen, you know what? Here's what I've learned. I learned that sales copy was worth every penny you'll ever invest in it. I learned that I saved tens of thousands, if not millions of dollars, learning more about sales copy. You know what else I learned? Every minute that you spend working on your sales copy pays for itself in even more free time. Personally, my free time has doubled since learning more about sales copy, and yours can too. Do you see what I'm doing? I'm telling the story, and the objections are all wrapped inside of this very short story. Very short. This isn't a long story. But I answered 3 objections. Number 1, Accelerator is expensive. Number 2, Accelerator, excuse me. Number 1 is sales copy. Is it really that important? That is an objection. Is sales copy really that important? Yeah, it's the most important thing in your online business. Number 2, Accelerator is expensive. Yeah, it's worth every penny you'll invest. You'll save tens of thousands of dollars if you get this right. And number 3, well, it takes too much time. Yeah, but the time that you spend doing this will multiply itself exponentially in free time. So you see how I answered the objections? I'm going to reiterate these objections later on in the close, in the grand offer. I'll answer them specifically. But what I've done is pre-frame those objections. So the user is thinking in his or her mind, they've already got those objections running through their mind. And now I've already answered them without ever bringing it up as an objection. It's actually within the story arc. And I think that is the genius of this particular enhanced rapport formula. Answer it within the story arc. So that's just how I do the back in the day. Part 2 is life was good, started to see results. This was how I start off. I listened to this guy, and for a while, I was taking his advice, and my life got a lot better, to be honest with you. It wasn't awesome. I wasn't exactly making millions, but it got a lot better. You see how I'm telling the story, and this is all true, by the way. I'm telling a good story, but it's not a great story. I said, I went from struggling to even know how I was going to pay the rent to being able to pay the rent on time. It was nice to actually walk into my apartment complex at the time and hand them a check on the day it was due and have a little bit of money in the bank, all from focusing more on my sales copy. Now, I was just getting started, granted, but it was already starting to pay off. And I started to feel more confident. My outlook on life really took a turn for the better. See, I'm not talking about anything really substantive here. I'm not saying my business grew X% or anything like that. You don't need to do that. You can just talk about the things that your client is probably struggling with. In this particular case, a lot of my clients would be struggling with, well, I don't know if I'm going to pay the rent. I don't know if I'm going to make it online. Those are very common things that people deal with when we're dealing with making money online. If this was weight loss, it would be something different. If it was dating, it'd be something different. But you get the idea. We can do this with any product. My life got a lot better. You could even say you could even go so far as to say my life really started to improve, not by leaps and bounds, but it really did get better. You see how I'm talking? I'm not saying, wow, my life just got way good. Well, that's going to ruin the end of the grand finale. We want the way good to be after you hit rock bottom, because for most people it is. For most people who are in a position of having an expertise in a service or in a product, they had to go through some really challenging times to get there. And that's what we want to tell, how we want to tell that story. Now, this is what, again, during this time, one thing really stood out to me. Again, I'm going back to the one thing, one little known approach to sales copy that really showed a ton of promise. And here's where I would list 3 benefits. This little known approach really did shine when it came to making money faster. I was able to pay my bills a little bit faster. And if I would have kept going, I would have paid it a lot faster. And another thing it gave me was more freedom, more free time. So I'm just listing benefits. This is free, and I'm pre-teasing the benefits that I'm going to list for my profit. And what was really cool about this one thing is it allowed me to figure out a way to where I didn't have to think about how to write copy. It started writing itself. Now I'm going to tell you that one difference maker in just a moment. So I just open a loop right there in the story arc. So I'm listing benefits inside the story. Again, everything's inside the story, as opposed to just talking benefits then telling story. I'm telling a story, listing benefits, telling a story, going through objections. Do you see the difference? It's subtle, but it's very powerful. And finally, number 3 is then it happened. So I'm telling a really good story. My life started getting better. I was starting to see results. I was starting to see results until it happened. Okay, and this is the birth of your nightmare story. Everything was really starting to look up for me until something happened on a tragic day in November of 1998. I was struck with a near fatal heart attack. And you can hear a pin drop when someone says that. So I'm telling you all true, by the way. It was actually in October, but so this is all true. So everything was kind of starting to see results. I started to actually get better at copy. I started realizing the importance of sales copy. My life started getting financially better. And then it happened. Boom. And then I tell inside the nightmare story, granted, I was working my ass off, 16 hours a day to see this little bit of results. When now I can work a fraction of that time and see exponentially more powerful results because I have a tool that I use called Accelerator. That's how you would kind of pitch this later on down the line. Now, of course, you would use this for your own product or service. And this is the birth of your nightmare story. You could literally walk in the nightmare story and take out the very first bit, I wasn't always. You could literally go into the nightmare story from there. And then it happened. I remember it like it was yesterday. It was November 6, 1970. It was raining outside. It was cold. It's exactly the stuff inside the nightmare story formula. We just added a little bit of stuff before it. And here's what's really cool. You can actually shorten the nightmare story. A lot of people ask me this. Some nightmare stories are 15 minutes long inside of a video sales letter. Here lately, we've been using very short, like literally 5 to 15 slides of a nightmare story. And if we do that, it works if we use this rapport formula. It works if you use this. Otherwise, stick to the standard nightmare formula because you do need to build that rapport and you do need to give your customers hope as well as scaring the crap out of them. Because let me tell you, when I tell the hard tech story, as I've done many times, it scares people, and it should. It should. You can actually, a healthy young guy, a quote unquote healthy young guy, certainly one that looked healthy. You don't see guys in their 30s often rushed into with a care flight helicopter into the ER at 4:30 in the morning. That usually doesn't happen. So it is definitely a wake up call, especially to someone that never drank, never did drugs or anything like that. So I didn't have anything that was, I wasn't trying to kill myself, right? So that's how this works. Now, here's the important thing to note. Whatever it is, until it happened, it can be anything. Like I just used a heart attack. It could be something specific to your business. Until this happened, I wrote my first full-length sales letter and it completely bombed. I was seeing success here and there. I was seeing better email opens, and something happened that I just couldn't figure out. And no matter how I tried to do it, it just completely bombed. I lost tens of thousands of dollars. I almost lost my entire business. Okay, that did not happen to me, but let's pretend that I did for a moment. That was directly related to copywriting. If I'm doing Accelerator, it could be directly related to fitness. Like I could use the heart attack. I could use the, then it happened. I found out, the foods I was eating I was definitely allergic to, whatever it is. And you went into this whole food allergy thing, ended up in the hospital. So something that opened your mind to a new way of thinking. I think it's better that if it doesn't have anything to do with it, like the heart attack has nothing to do with internet marketing. Well, it does indirectly. So my 16, 18-hour workout days certainly contributed to having a near fatal heart attack. Genetics, definitely the key factor. Poor diet for a long time before I was in my 30s. So yeah, that certainly played a part too, but work and stress by far and away the biggest part of the whole thing. But it's not directly related. In other words, internet marketing and heart disease, not direct, not even close to the same thing. So it can be something crazy until it happened. I got married. I got divorced. My first child was born, and he was born premature and almost died. If there's whatever happened in your life, that there's a point in your life to where you were dabbling around with the stuff that you do now, and something happened that would make a very intriguing human interest story. It doesn't have to be something as dire as a heart attack. It can be something very, very simple until it happened. Until I saw this one guy speak on stage. And this one guy, Gary Vaynerchuk, was the one guy I saw. When I saw Gary speak, it changed me. That's a true story. I love Gary. Love me some Gary V. But so yeah, until I saw Gary Vaynerchuk, and he changed the way I thought about it for everything. See, that's not like some dramatically dire thing, right? But then the dire part would be like, and I realized that I had the right idea, the one idea that sales copies everything, but I was doing it all wrong. And guess what? If I would have kept going, I would have dwindled down to nothing. I would have done this. I would have done this. You can just say what you think you would have done. Everyone's got a nightmare story. Look for it. And one more thing, this revised approach to the nightmare story formula in Accelerator allows you to tell the tale twice. And I really love that. It will allow you to tell the good stuff that happened in your life right when you started getting into this and seeing some good results. Then you have something really bad happen, or something really, it doesn't have to be really bad. It could be like my example. Then I saw Tony Robbins speak, and I completely changed my course. I realized I was overworking it and overthinking it, or it could be something like that. Now preferably be something like, I kept trying to go through it the way I was doing it. And despite the fact that now I know that sales copy is the most important thing, I got distracted. It ended up I ended up filing bankruptcy. That's a better nightmare story, but it doesn't have to be that. But then after you get through it, you tell the whole thing again. Now you go right back to the objections. Now what I used to think this was going to be like this was the third most important thing. Now I know it's the most important thing. So I spend most of my time during the week just tweaking sales copy, and I get so much more money and results just from this 1 hour exercise I do every week. Now I can do it in an hour. It used to take me a long time. Now it takes me just minutes. You see, you're telling the same story with the same objections all over again at the end of your nightmare story. And I'm going to teach you how to do the same thing too. Let's get into the tips. And that's where it takes you right into the next step, which is called the big problem. So that is the enhanced rapport formula. And I will make sure that you guys get a copy of these slides. I'm going to print them out. And I forgot to do this before the webinar. I apologize, but we will print it out. And I believe we will have it in the replay of this, or Leanne can email it out, one of the two. So you guys will get a copy of these slides, and you will of course have the replay inside Accelerator. We'll have a replay for a little bit on YouTube, but we will have it taken down within a day or so, and then it's only for the VIP members in Accelerator. So that is the enhanced rapport formula. Now we're going to pop over here to Accelerator. We're going to continue our training. And we're going to continue our training with step 2, the vital connection. Now, the modest introduction we've already covered. So all we need to do right now is talk about this part right here, the nightmare story. Okay. So the overview of the story, you can skip this part. You just did the overview of the story. You can just skip that part. This is the part where you'll come in. You'll come in right here. You'll come into this section. When was it? What were the conditions? What were you wearing? Who you're with? Where were you? This is all spelled out right here. Now, you don't have to use all of these. You don't have to use all of these, but you get the general idea. It's a 5-minute video that tells you everything you need to know right here about this. The introduction is basically what I said. I remember the date. It was this date, and I remember it because there was a particularly bad rainstorm that day. And I remember I was with my friend Dave, and he had this old 72 Pontiac, and it was veering all over the road. I mean, that's all a true story from my weight loss every other day diet video. But the point is that that's all that the introduction is. The bad part is the part that you've already talked about. I already said it's leading up to the part that I already talked about. I already said, hey, it's something really tragic happened. I'm giving it away. In other words, you're literally telling someone what the terrible rock bottom is before you tell them. And this is, again, a very powerful storytelling mechanism, because you pre-frame in their mind what to expect, and then you tell them the story that leads up to it. So the bigger that this is, or the more obscure it is, like if you said, then it happened. I listened to one really weird old guy speaking on stage, and my whole life changed forever. Let me tell you what happened. It was August the 7th, and see what I did? You don't know who that really weird old guy is, but and again, it doesn't have to be something really tragic. You can even say, if it was my heart attack, for example, I would say, and then one thing happened. One thing that almost took my life. And if it wasn't for the brave actions of a few people, I literally wouldn't be here to tell the story. It was an October evening, blah, blah. I just go right into the introduction part. So the bad part is going right through what led you up to this event in your life. And again, all the copy is in here. You can just you can just go through and just select the copy that you really like, So you're just basically saying, I was kind of struggling along with this. And like I said, I was struggling along with my sales copy, and you're going back in time before you got into the sales copy in my example, for example, if you want to go back in time. So you're going to go back a little bit further before you first got turned on to the idea of whatever you're talking. So this is before that. I said, not too long before I got turned on the idea, I was really drowning. I was treading water. I couldn't pay the bills. It was pretty bad. And, I was just literally going to seminar after seminar, hoping I would come up with something. I was going to webinar after webinar, praying and the miracle would happen. And then I guess it was all the stress and all the long hours and everything started adding up. And I started feeling a little unhealthy and it started getting worse and worse and worse until finally I just ignored everything. I just ignored it because I was just so focused on I have to make this work. I have to make this work. And then it happened. I woke up at 4 a.m. with a heart attack and I was scared to death. And then I would just tell the story. So again, this is my personal story. You could tell whatever story that you want to tell, but that's the really bad part. And again, all the slides are under here. You can just go in here, and just let Accelerator do the storytelling for you. I'm just giving you an overview of how I would tell it. And through that really bad part is you're going to come to what I call declaring independence. So here's what I would say. When I was on that gurney being care flighted in a helicopter because an ambulance would have been too slow, I made myself a promise, and I'm fulfilling that promise right now to you. If I figure out how to do this, how to get sales copy to work for me so that I don't work myself into an early grave, I swear to all the powers that be that I will tell every man, woman, and child about it. And I will make it my mission to help every marketer on the planet perfect and accelerate their sales copy so they can put their life more on autopilot and spend it with those they love. And I said I would do this or I would die trying. And I didn't want to die like this. So that was a promise that I made for myself. And then it ends with the moral journey. The moral journey is a really cool part. This is the part where you want to, if you tell like what you did afterwards. Okay. So the moral journey is, okay, after I healed from the heart attack, I went back to that guy. I'm giving my own story here with the one idea of sales copy. I went back to my notes, the notes that inspired me so much before all this tragedy happened to me, that said sales copy is the most important thing. And I dug through there and I found that one thing that was really sticking out, that one thing. And I went to seminar after seminar. I started studying book after book, and I finally figured out exactly how to apply this to my business. And when I did, this is where you're going to start transitioning. When I did, it became a system. I perfected it to the point to where it's become a system. It works so well, it works repeatedly. Now, then all this stuff is just in the copy samples. You can select and go with it below. And let me just give you a quick results about this. Here's just some of the results that people are getting from this very system I'm talking about. X, Y, and Z. You can use testimonials here, or you can use your own results. After applying the system time and time again, here's what I saw. I saw a 400% increase in my revenue within 7 months. I saw 4 of my products take off like a rocket, and over $1 million being spent on each one of them through other people. I didn't have to spend a dime on my own traffic. And I finally got myself to the point to where I was no longer burdened with any sort of financial strains. And eventually to the point to where I had so much more time on my hands, I never had to worry about working myself into early grave ever again. I'm going to tell you all, this is the final transition. I'm going to tell you all about how you can apply the same system to your business today. But first, let's talk about what's really holding you down, and it's not what you think. So if you'll just literally go back and just listen to everything I just said, I just created a very quick nightmare story. I know this stuff by heart, so I didn't even look at the drop-down boxes much, but that's the nightmare story and the transition out of it into, I'm going to go through the tips of the big problem. So I didn't spend a lot of time on this because the main teaching I wanted to cover dealt with the pre-framing and dealt with going into the enhanced rapport formula. So, but that is really the key. Do not skimp on this part of your video sales letter. You can make it really short. You can make this whole section literally 5 minutes long. You can't. I just would advise you to completely overestimate the importance of it. It's very important in virtually every field. Now, a lot of people will say, well, I'm in corporate real estate. How important is this? Then talk about the nightmare story of your client. What's the worst client story you ever heard? Take something that your client or clients would have to overcome, or this one particular client had to overcome, and why you're so good at what you do then. This guy did this and landed him in here, and he ended up in this horrible situation. And I want something a lot better for you than that. That's why you're in the right place today. That's an extremely valid nightmare story. And it's not about you, it's about a customer. Now, you'd have to change some of the stuff in the enhanced rapport formula, but you get the idea. The structure works for any business that I've ever seen. and it works for any product for sure that I've ever seen. Services, you have to tweak it a little bit more, especially online services where it's, you know, like consulting services. That's more client based. Unless you've got a great story. I've got a friend of mine that's got a consulting business, and his nightmare story is epic. It just got you glued to the seat, you know. And he talks about this, and it's like, wow, now I really understand the importance of the field he's in. He's in relational consulting. So it's like he tells this horrific marriage story, and it's like, wow. So it's like he really puts people right where he is, and right where they are rather, and probably a lot worse than they are. So they can go, wow, you've really been through it. So now I can listen to you with a little bit more authority. So that is the whole idea. And I'll finish this and we'll take questions. The idea behind the vital connection is rapport. You're wanting to build rapport with someone that you will never meet. You'll never meet 99.9% of the people who watch your video sales letter. You'll never meet them. So people buy from people they like. How do you buy from people you like when you've never met them? Well, there's only one way. It's through words. You're not going to do it through pictures. You're going to do it through words. Words will help you build rapport with someone. The right words will help you build intense rapport. In fact, I've seen video sales letters go completely viral because of step 2, because they nailed a killer nightmare story. And people will sit there around going, man, you got to watch this video. Watch it like it's 3 minutes in, he starts telling the story. It will freak you out. I mean, I've seen that happen quite a bit. So don't underestimate this. If you get someone locked into a very good story, and remember, you don't have to do a whole lot of the writing yourself. This is the most intense part of the writing, by the way, in Accelerator. Out of those 500 or so words that you have to write, maybe 700, maybe 400, this is where probably 300 of them go. This is the most, and even then, it's your own story, so it's not, you don't have to worry about copywriting. You're just telling a story. You know, if you follow the structure of this story, follow this structure right here, and follow the structure of the teaching that I just gave you, the story will start writing itself. You'll start seeing, oh, I can put this here. Oh, this makes sense if I do this here. So that's really the key thing. But other than rapport, the other thing that it does, and I cannot overemphasize this enough, is it puts your customer just 1 inch below you. So you want to be definitely more of an expert in the field of whatever you're teaching than your prospect. That's a given. But the truth of the matter is that we want to learn from people who are better than us, but not so much better that we can't relate. So rapport and relation, pretty darn close to the same animal here. Rapport is more personal. Relation is more like how they view themselves in relationship to you. So that's why this is so important. All right, Leanne, we're going to take some questions on step 2 and on the enhanced rapport formula. We'll go back over here to these notes here in case we need them.
Alrighty. Well, we got one question from David. He's asking if you can give an example of how a nightmare story relates to supplement sales.
Oh, sure. All right. So David, I tell you what, let me do this. I'm going to go back over. Would you guys mind if I stop sharing my screen so I can go back over to my Hangout here? And this way I can see the questions. Got a lot of people on today. That's awesome. Okay. Come over here. So David, okay. I'll say I'm looking for, okay, so David's question. Yeah, David. So David, can you give me a little more detail? For example, what got you started selling supplements? Have you ever been in a situation where you were unhealthy, for example? So here's how I would relate to this. I'm assuming that you've probably been in a position in your life where you weren't healthy, or you weren't fit, or you weren't whatever supplement that you sell. You probably have some sort of emotional connection to that supplement. Am I correct? Or, I mean, so this does assume that you do. If you don't, I will guarantee you that a client does. So you can throw out, David, if you want to go ahead and shoot a text here. I'll wait for it. See here, I'm going to scroll down to the bottom here so I can find everybody. David, if you want to throw out more information to me. So you're saying, oh, cognitive market. So brain health. Have you ever had anyone that you know that suffered through dementia or Alzheimer's? If you have, that's a gut-wrenching story. I should know. That's how my mom died. So if I was selling a cognitive enhancing supplement, I would completely tell the story of my mom, and I would do it in a way that would be completely respectful. Well, David, there's your story. So I would say, let me just tell you, and the cool thing is, and I would tell it because this is the truth. We were able to have my mom survive 10 extra years without having to repeat herself all the time, simply by increasing two supplements, which you would probably know what they are. We won't go into nutrition here, and by getting her off carbohydrates. And getting her into a ketogenic diet. So yeah, it's so yes, I would completely. So David say, great, super, I see this now. So anyone else, like just go for it. Let me let me tell you the deal. Noah asked a question, and it's a good question. Do you feel like we should have words on the slide that we're telling the nightmare story, or just pictures? Never have I been more positive about this. Words, unless it's a very visual audience. The worst thing you can do is tell that story and tell them what to think. Show them what it looks like. Having a picture of a generic heart attack, for example, even that I went back and forth on in a webinar. I would never do it in a video sales letter, ever, because there's no way the average person is even going to get how severe it is. And if those who have been through it will say, well, that's not what it was like for me. So when it comes to fitness, it's like, oh, let me tell you, I used to be really overweight. And then you show a picture of yourself and you're kind of overweight. Even that can be a problem. Now, I do show that picture. And I'll always say, you know what? I'm overweight for me. I'm well over 38% body fat. Now, you may be heavier than this. You may be not quite this unfit. Whatever your position may be, just know I can relate to it. And that's how I would say it. So yeah, that you want to be cautious with pictures, because pictures, the reason why children love to be read to at night and very rarely like to look at the pictures. They will look at the pictures in books. But a lot of children like to be read to because their imagination is far more powerful than any picture, far more powerful than any picture. So, all right, so let's take some other questions. Hope that answered some question. We got a lot of them coming in, so guys, just bear with us. We'll get to as many as we can.
We got one from Ray, who says, is there a VSL out there right now where someone is using this new enhanced formula that's already working well that you know of?
This exact formula, yeah, there's a couple that I can post inside the Copy Posse. Some of it's NDA because it's clients I work with and they don't want their stuff getting out, and I have to respect that. So the ones that are doing the best right now is NDA. But I know other people using it, so yeah, I'll show it. I'll show it to you. And then I'll ask the other ones. The only bad thing about being a copywriter sometimes is when force you to sign NDAs and you can't tell anyone anything. I can just tell you, yeah, I got this one customer who's video so they're killing it. Yeah, I just can't share it with anyone. It kind of sucks, but All right, so next question.
We got one from Drew. Drew is asking, what if I got divorced in 2007 after 30 years of marriage and tried to commit suicide and then went on to make millions as a consultant? Would that be a good story?
Yeah, of course it would. If you, yeah. I'm sorry to hear that, by the way. But I'm glad you didn't commit suicide. But yes, if that story relates, example, like, so for example, you went on to make millions as a consultant, right? If you're talking about a product that's talking about what you consult on, and that you're training people to be consultants. In other words, if it's relevant to what you're selling, then absolutely. Because you would say, listen, I was doing it the old fashioned way. I like talking like this, by the way, in copy. I was doing it the old way. And the old way cost me a 30-year marriage and almost cost me my life. Yeah, I mean, so that's the old way. The old way contributed to the demise of the marriage. The old way I got so depressed I almost committed suicide, and I thought I was going to hit rock. I really hit rock bottom, and then I went back and discovered a new way, and the new way really helped me pull myself back up. And now today I have this happy life. So yes, that's a very good story arc if again it's relatable to that. Okay, next one.
Let's see, 1 second. All right, Richard has an interesting question. He asks, if I'm recruiting for an MLM, should I focus the nightmare story on the product or the best marketing plan in the world?
If you're recruiting for an MLM, is that what you're saying?
That's what he said in the question.
So in other words, the video sales letter is actually a recruitment tool. It's not about the product. Here's what I would do. I think I know what you're talking about, and let me know if this gives you the answer you're looking for. Let's say that you are, I'm just making this up, so I don't know what MLM company you're working for, that you're recruiting for, but let's say it was Amway, and let's say that the that Amway only had one product, and that one product was I'm going to go ahead and use, since we're on heart disease, I'm going to use a heart formula. Okay. I would tell a nightmare story related to someone going through a heart attack and how important it is to how much it means to keep you and your family and your friends alive. And this is why this business opportunity is so awesome, is you not only get to make money, but you get to help you keep people alive. And because the supplement is so freaking awesome. So that's how I would go about it if I was in your position. And let me know if that answers the question. I just want to make sure I got it right. Okay, Terry asked about real estate brokerage for divorce and probate clients. That one's an easy one, Terry. I've been asked that one several times. So it's like, I would tell the story either based on yourself or based on one of the biggest nightmare of your clients. And I'm making this up, of course, because I have no idea, but just picture this. It's like, so right now you might be thinking to yourself, okay, I'm going through one of the worst times in my life. How can it possibly get any worse? Let me tell you the story of Dan and Susan. They failed to get their real estate, probate issues solved. And now Dan has got this horrible thing that is. So that's how I would, go about doing that. I would tell the story about them. Now, again, you can tell the story of like, I remember when Dan first came to office and he was doing pretty well. He was like, I'm happy to move on. That's how you would do this, the starting part, he was happy to move on, and Susan was too. They looked all good. And then all of a sudden this horrible thing happened. They got hit with this, they had no idea of the entanglement that probate would bring. And so that's how I would tell the story. Or you could tell the story of yourself. I got into this business when I myself did blank. So that would work really well. So, okay, next question.
Let's see, we got one from John. Hey, John, thoughts on positioning yourself so that you reflect the authenticity in your story, the like me casual guy or the JA suit guru? Do you feel casual guy reflects success in the context of a new businessman on the scene?
Depends on the business. But again, it's like, it still comes across as it doesn't matter how successful you are or really what business you're in. It's like, let's take, I'm a big, I did MMA for years and I'm a big UFC fan. So Dana White, the president of the UFC, he shows up in t-shirts and jeans, and he owns the UFC. It doesn't matter, right? No one's going to question him for being success, but that's that particular industry, and he can get by with it. There's guys like Richard Branson that's very well known for dressing very casual. And so he might appear very like, hey, I'm just hanging out here on the beach. Here I am. But it's kind of like synonymous with his success. So I would just say, if I'm understanding your question correctly, that I would still introduce myself in a very modest way. It's like, I wasn't always a guy making this kind of money, doing this kind of thing, and had this kind of success with business. Here's how I originally got started. And that still works really, really well. I want to read George's question just because it's a really good one as well. Are you saying do this? I grasped a part of the formula before the nightmare story and had low success. No, I was right there. I'm saying I had some success. Yeah. So I got this one idea and it really started to pay off. And then B, I hit the depths of the abyss, I like the way you said, and really got the formula and had great results. And so yes, that's basically it. So yeah, that's essentially it, George. You'll see it more in detail that you did. Yeah. It's the grasping apart. You got the concept of what you're teaching today before you went through one of the worst times of your life. And going through one of the worst times of your life really helps you focus on the concept. So let me go back to my specific example. Like the one big thing that I learned was how much time sales copy would save me. I had no idea that having great sales copy meant I could work literally 1/10 the number of hours that I was working. And that was a lesson that I learned a little too late. And here's why. I woke up at 4 in the morning with a massive heart attack. I was already working 16-hour days. I had the idea in my head. I saw the light at the end of the tunnel, not that light, but the positive light. But it was a little bit too little too late, and I almost died. And so here I am on that. Now I realize, wow, I was really onto something back then. And it really does do that. And now I've proven that time and time again. Do you see how I did that? It's basically exactly what you wrote. And that's pretty much exactly what I went through. But I just more to make it a little bit more specific. So, okay, so Terry said, yes, a client story. Yeah. So Terry, let me know if that's exactly. Yeah, so that's it. So just being very cautious with that, obviously, because of the sensitivity of the story. Change the names to protect the innocent, so to say. But yeah, he's saying that, e.g., someone who was going to walk away from a reverse mortgage of a sister who passed away, but whom I got 125,000 net. Yeah. So going through that, I would tell the story from the position of like, this guy was going to have to walk away from this and lose all this money on top of the most important thing, the loss of his sister. And then say, just picture losing someone that you're so close to and then having to deal with all this financial stress on top of it. Maybe you're in that position right now. Well, the good news is I was able to save them 125,000. So yeah, I basically, I'm cutting that very short, but you get the idea. It doesn't have to be a long one for what you do, Terry. Your whole nightmare story segment could be literally 3 minutes long. It doesn't need to be long. The nightmare stories that need to be longer are ones that are selling like the more of a popular, like weight loss, dating, finance. Those need to be a little longer because people think they've heard it all. Okay, so next question.
We got one from Colin, who asks, how long should my VSL be given this new format if I'm running from cold traffic to VSL to strategy session?
Cold traffic, can you see, can you just reread the question? I'm sorry, you cut out on me just for 1 second, or my.
Yeah, it seems as if he's running cold traffic to the VSL and then to a strategy session.
Mm-hmm.
And he's asking how long the VSL should be given this new format.
So if the VSL sells, does it sell the strategy session, or is it giving a strategy session away? Is it a qualifier? That's the question. So if you're trying to just get a lead, and here's the general rule of thumb with length on a video sales letter. Until the Q&A, let's just forget the Q&A exists for a moment. Length of a video sales letter is almost always indicative of price. The higher the price and the higher the element of risk aversion that you're going to have to overcome, the longer the video sales letter tends to need to be. Like Jeff asked a question, have you ever wrote a successful VSL that ended up around an hour? I haven't written very many that ended up anywhere less than an hour. I've written a few. My wife's is an hour and 6 minutes. My every other day diet one was shorter because it just was the very first one, and it got extended to like 50 minutes. So yeah, many. But the question isn't how long it should be. It's how interesting it should be. That is until you get to the stuff where it's a qualifier. So I think test. I'm sorry about that. I think I think that's the same person. If it's a qualifier, it does not need to be long. You want to keep it, unless again someone doesn't know what you're consulting about. Like in other words, hey, you might not know this, but standing on one leg is the fastest way to lose weight. I'm going to tell you all about it in this. So you might need to do a little more explaining if that's what your position is. And then you're going to say, yeah, I'll see if you qualify for a free consulting call. If it's something people know about, like, hey, I buy Google AdWord traffic, or I'm a Facebook expert and I'm taking on new clients for qualification. The video says like you could use the 5-minute VSL formula for that. You could use something very short if they already know it is. Now, unless, and I really do like this, you use the 20-minute VSL formula, which is Incelerator, all of it's Incelerator, and you go with a case study. So I think case studies are far more powerful qualifying video sales letters than straight out, hi, my name is Ted, and here's this. I think a case study is like where, hey, this is Ted. I'm going to give you a case study of one of my most successful clients in the field of blank, whatever that is. And this is a guy who's probably not unlike yourself. He started here, he did this, and you'll see exactly what he did so you can apply it to your own business. And you walk them through a case study. So I'm going to actually do a whole tutorial on case study VSLs. They're the simplest ones to write because there's not hardly any copywriting involved. Now, granted, Accelerator is geared toward copywriting, geared toward learning how to sell something. But you just don't need to have a whole lot of copy there. Now, you can go through the Accelerator formula, use the same 5 steps, but you're still telling a case study. So if you use the same 5 steps, the pattern interrupt is, hey, check out this graph. This is how much, and he shows us some graph, and it goes way up. He goes, on money, it's like, or way down. Like it's totally opposite of what they're thinking about seeing. That's what can happen unless you use what I'm about to tell you. And the guy that I'm going to show you is a case study, did it, and his graph of profits look like this. I'm going to tell you that story in just a minute, but let me tell you, the guy I'm talking about, he didn't start off being, one of the most successful guys on the internet. I can't tell you, I would say you probably keep his name. I can't tell you who he is, but you would probably know him if I did. In fact, He started off, he has a really interesting story. And then where am I? I'm right back into the same exact video sales letter formula that we're talking about. I'm into the enhanced report formula. I'm into the nightmare story formula. Now you can do that, and you can do it in a much shorter fashion. You can use the 20-minute VSL version of that and say, hey, at the end of this, I'm going to tell you how you can get the same exact thing. And then you loop back at the end of it and say, okay, how would you like, I'm going to get, and you could, I would definitely hype for free. It's like, I'm going to tell you exactly how you can get the same information, and I'll find out if you qualify for this absolutely free of charge. The only price for it is that you have to watch this video until the very end. So I like to do that. I like to give someone an actual thing, say, watch this video to the end, and you can get this qualification to see if you qualify for free. At the end of it, it's like, hey, I'm taking a limited number of people to do the same thing I did for this guy, and see if you qualify, click, fill out the form below and say submit. So that's what I do for qualification guys. It's really, really good formula for that. So Peter said, what if it's a non-health or money product, something like how to use Windows 10? Okay, that's easy. So Peter, when I say that's easy, I'm not insulting you. I'm saying that's easy because I jumped all over Windows 10 because I hate Windows. Sorry, Peter. don't ask for a refund. But I'm a Mac guy. But yes, I could, because I did have an experience with Windows. Okay. And I did have one experience. I guarantee you that you have a whole lot of customers that have negative experiences, probably specifically with Windows 10. So I would survey your audience and say, hey, tell me what's the worst thing, your worst Windows 10 experience. And let me, if you don't mind sharing it with me. And you'll probably get somebody to tell you something to blow your mind. Like, I almost missed the birth of my child thanks to being stuck on Windows 10 or something crazy like that, right? So you never know what it is. So in this case, I would always make that story, if this guy did not have the information I'm going to be sharing with you, he would have ended up X, Y, or Z, either losing money, losing time, getting fired from his job, whatever the case might be. So that's the way that you would tie it into a nightmare story. And that's kind of a fun one too, because everyone's got software nightmare stories with every software. I kid Windows, but everyone's got that. All right. So, Sat says, how long would it be for a lead generation for a real estate agency? Again, I personally like the 20-minute and case study lead generation video sales letters. Okay, so actually, Selma says, yes, I don't like it. So there you go, Peter. You got somebody right there that doesn't like Windows 10. Again, the copywriting, you can go through the 20-minute VSL formula right now and literally plug and play a case study. Just replace the terms with, hey, I've got a case study to show you, basically, other than, hi, my name's John, and I have an unusual weight loss story to share with you. I have an unusual case study to share with you. It's pretty simple. You just change it to case study. But I want to show you it's very easy to rock out a case study VSL. And the good thing about a case study VSL, you only need one. You only need one. Someone might say, you might think they would say, oh yeah, that's just one example. Well, you end it and say, listen, I could give you dozens, if not hundreds of examples, but I think this one summarizes the success I'm having with this system really well. And if you would like the same success, if you'd like to see the same success, there's no reason why you can't. Let me see if I can help you. So the words I'm using, I'm sorry, I speak in copy. When you write copy for this long, you start speaking copy. But just go back and re-listen to this, guys, and listen to the words I just said, because it's a very good way to end the case study VSL and say, just look at the button below. Shannon said yes, and buy a Mac. Sorry, we're going off on poor Peter. Peter, do you still like us? Yeah, I've been a Mac guy from day one, but I did play around with a PC and just found out, just FYI, this PC is awesome for the things I was trying to use it for. It's just that I found it frustrating because it seems like it's 2 clicks for every one on a Mac, but it could be that I don't know it really well. Anyway, Caesar says, John, do you know or calculate what's percentage of people that see the whole VSL and finish it? Yeah, I don't have to, because Wistia does it for me. The average video sales letter has anywhere from 8 to 11% of people that watch the whole thing. So that's on average for a good VSL. Some have as low as 4. It doesn't really matter, because what you want to look for is not how many people watch the whole thing. It's how many people watch past the buy button drop. Because at that point, it's almost irrelevant. And if you do it right, you can have 25% watch to the buy button drop. Now, let me give you a percentage of how big that is. The average person on a written sales page, the average percentage on a written sales page that will see the buy button by reading the copy is only 2.5%. Now they'll scroll down and see it, but they didn't read anything. Now, good copywriters, and I'm one of them, we can write a very good sales page. And there are still times where I think sales pages are even more appropriate than a video sales letter. But you do have that problem with a sales page, is that you can scroll it. And so guys I know of the past 10 years have done many things to solve that problem. One is to make their sales page into multiple parts. That works sometimes, and sometimes it fails. Another is to, they kind of break their sales page up into barriers and stuff like that. So you have like a sales page section, and then you have some big graphic, and then you have another section, another graphic. You can still scroll it no matter how you get around it. You can still click and scroll. Video sales letter, you can't. And I think that's one of the reasons they work so well. Okay. Okay. Paul, hey, Paul, did you get taken care of? And quite a bit of participation today, guys. I really appreciate that. Okay, so we're going to take a few more questions here. And can sales page scrolling be eliminated? Richard says, on a video sales letter, obviously it's eliminated. It can't be eliminated. You can't turn a scroll off unless you do the click here for the next page, click here for the next page, which did work for some offers in the past. That did work. And if you have a sales page, I highly recommend you trying breaking it up into sections. But most of the time it's failed. So Saul said, just to be clear, I'm using a hardtack episode in my net. Oh gosh, sorry about that. And I'm actually using an image as my pattern up because it has nothing to do with what I'm offering. Yes, that's fine, Saul. That's totally fine. That's a different story. What I was talking about specifically is using the image inside when you're telling the story, because the mind is not, if they hit your site and it's not about heart disease and they see a heart attack, it's going to shock them and it's going to pattern interrupt them. So you're totally fine to do that. Larry said, is there a sweet spot timer rule when the buy? Yeah, here's what we've gone around with this. Let me, sorry, I read through that really quickly. Is there a sweet spot time rule of thumb when to drop the buy button? Almost invariably, it's when you offer the price. Almost invariably. Start there. That's the way it is built in Accelerator. Don't be afraid that it takes 30 minutes. Be afraid if it takes 30 minutes if your copy isn't strong, if your story isn't strong. You go through Accelerator, your story is going to be strong. Just if you put the work into it, of course. But yeah, that's when you drop the buy button 99 times out of 100. I've seen a few exceptions to the rule, but not many. So as far as time, this is where we like to shoot for in products that are in the $17 to $97 range. Like to shoot for 18 to 25 minutes, right around that time. If it goes a little longer, it's not the end of the world. If it's a little more expensive, it can go all the way to 40 minutes. It doesn't really matter if it's more expensive. Ryan says that, I think is it Ryan? I'm not sure if I pronounced that right. That having some trouble with my headline. Have you gone through the headline formula, formula workshop? If you haven't, that's where I would start. That's where I would go, and have your audience tell you about the headline. Have them say, hey, here's the deal. We'll go over some headline copywriting on the week 7 call where we take big Q&A. It's not pertinent specifically to this webinar, but do look into the headline formula for that. Jeff says, are more conversions to VSLs coming from mobile? Oh, yes, a great question, Jeff. Yes, yeah, mobile is 60 to 65% of your sales. And that's why you want your VSLs compressed into freaking oblivion. You really want those things tight. And I like to aim for a mega minute and get that thing really tight. And here's the trick of the day. You ready? Use YouTube. Now, I realize I say don't use YouTube in Accelerator, but that was recorded 4 years ago before YouTube got good, before YouTube got with it. YouTube is now the best way to stream a video sales letter. And guess what? As you probably figured out, it's free. Doesn't have the reporting that Wistia does, but it's free. And if you have a lot of traffic, that's a big, big, big thing. They have got mobile streaming down. So go with the company that has mobile streaming down. YouTube is played, it's something like 78% on mobile. So you want your video sales letter on YouTube for that purpose alone. And before anyone gets into YouTube questions, and I realize that wasn't pertinent to this as well, I apologize for answering that question, but it was a quick one, and it would apply to everyone on the call. Before you guys start saying, what do we do about, like, when you're watching the video, it says click below this video now, what do you do when you're on YouTube? If you really want to make more money with your video sales letter, do 2 versions, compress the hell out of the YouTube version, make it even smaller than your other version, and then change the close to say, since you're watching this on YouTube on an iPhone or a mobile phone right now, here's what you do. I want you to window out of this video, click the little X button and resize the video, and you're going to see below a button that I want you to click. So instead of look below this video now, because there is no below this video now if you're watching on an iPhone, and there's nothing we can do about this right now. I have begged and borrowed and pleaded for plugins that would show a buy button on the video. I thought Lead Player had one, but it didn't work on an iPhone. Sorry. Until they fix that, can't do anything about it. So we've got time for a couple more, guys, and any other questions we'll send to support and we'll get them covered that way. Rice says, my product image is consulting for men. I make men handsome. Oh, cool. However, I posted the headline along with the 3 ways of instantly become the best looking man in your city without designer clothes or spending hours in the gym, which apparently wasn't great. Okay, so yeah, I will give you some pointers. The best way to do that is to post that in the copy posse, right? And I'll respond to it there since it's more specific to your particular product and a headline. And another thing is, don't forget the posse. That is where you want to go for questions like this anyway, because you'll get a lot of feedback from other people. Okay, so Tony says, which type of traffic do you send your survey to help you create copy for your VSL? Do you use AdWords, SEO, YouTube? Which traffic source will provide the best market intelligence? Oh, I use all three. All three. Yeah, AdWords. Well, no, I take it back. I don't use SEO. I use AdWords, YouTube, Facebook. Those are the 3 that I would use that would give you the most relevant. If you only had to pick one, I'd use AdWords. That's what most people were using long before Facebook or YouTube. Okay, first part of the enhanced report formula, where you talk about it being in the back in these days. I got some decent results. I don't see a question here. Go in the introduction part of the Nightmare Story. Yes. Yeah, just listen to this again, Saul, and it'll make sense. I talk about what to skip in the Nightmare Story. Yeah, you'll skip the introduction because you just did it. And you'll skip the the part where I said I wasn't always this. You won't need to do that. You'll tie in right where the actual story begins. Is called the overview. Excuse me. It's called the overview is what you'll skip, and the introduction is where you'll start. I take it back. The overview you'll skip. The introduction is where you'll start. $6,000 coaching fee. How long to drive application? Still the same length because you don't tell them what the coaching fee is, unless you want to pre-qualify them. And then you would tell them, and it still doesn't matter because if it's hot, it doesn't matter. Now that being said, I've seen people that have a $6,000 product and they do a full hour-long video sales letter as if they're selling the product, and they get to the end of it and they promise at the very start, listen, there's no money you're going to pay me today, but I'm going to tell you all about how to do X and how I can help you do X. And then you tell the whole video sales letter like you normally would and say, I'm accepting limited partnerships. It's cost a $6,000 fee. There's no cost for the application, I'm assuming, but I only take X number of people a day, and then you have a counter on there. That's the way I would do it. Cesar said, I trusted in my confidence in a VSL. I ask, if people don't need to see the whole VSL, why do I need to trust in the effective action? Well, because people people don't ever watch anything. No one watches 100% of anything. Well, I say no one. There's people that do, but very few, statistically speaking. They don't need to. Your average sales page is getting under like a little over 4% to the buy button. And then it gets to how many people click that buy button. That's your average sales page. If I get you 20%, you have 5 times more of a chance of people clicking that buy button. That's why you should totally trust it. That, and it's doing about $14 billion a year in revenue right now. That's another good reason to trust it. Ray says your new video for Rose had a lot of video and images. If we start with a dirty VSL for the first or few images, can we get by with less compression for mobile? Absolutely. Yeah, Ray, that's a good question. The reason why we went with the more images in that video, there's only about like 40 of them in the whole video, but we went with more images because her audience is all female and her audience is very much into pretty things. So we wanted to test it, and it did work better. Sometimes images will work, but 85% of that VSL is all slides. Despite the video, despite the pictures, it's slides. Just watch it for yourself. Lots and lots and lots of slides. Do I think so? And by the way, the vast majority of video sales letters that work are almost all slides. So let's just get statistically relevant here. I mean, the video sales letters that I know that are making 50 million a year, they're almost all slides. There are some with like video intros they use as pattern interrupts, and they go to slides. I mean, slides work, guys. We've proven it thousands of times. John, do you think doing a VSL to sell a live high-ticket mastermind is a good way to go? I think it's a good way to get pre-qualification, the same way that we're talking about here. Do a case study. Say, I'm going to show you a case study of a guy that attended my mastermind. Here's what he did. Here's exactly what he applied. Ray said it was gorgeous for many reasons. Yes, indeed. My wife is very gorgeous. And it was a beautiful VSL. Thank you. But yeah, so Saul, that is what I would suggest doing, is do that. I'm trying to answer all the questions I can before my voice goes out, guys. Still hanging in there. Yeah, I love high ticket masterminds. I love selling them with VSLs, but what no one is doing, very few people are doing, is they're using case studies of the stuff you're actually going to be teaching in your high ticket mastermind, and they use a case study to get a qualified lead. I believe in closing like $6,000, for example, Drew, your coaching fee, $6,000 is worth a 10-minute Skype call, don't you think? If you had a hot applicant and you could close, say, 25% of your applicants, would you do Skype calls? In other words, you make $6,000 in an hour. You don't make $6,000 for 3 of them, but you make $6,000 for one of them. Yeah, I'd probably do that. Not a bad income. So yeah, I totally believe in doing that. Now you don't need to, but I think you're going to get better results. That's across the board. Everyone will get better results if you get on the phone with somebody, but on a $47 ebook, that's impractical, which is why video sales letters came in hand, or $300 book, it's impractical. But $6,000 or a high-end mastermind, it's a very practical thing to get on the phone with somebody. Yeah. So I think we answered a lot of questions. We went rapid fire there, Leanne. So I want to thank everyone again for attending. You guys were great. We're going to have an instant replay up. Well, within instant meaning within about 30 to 40 minutes, it'll be live. And the link that you go to will actually be, I think it's emailed out to you automatically. Am I correct on that, Leanne?
It is. The email goes out, I think, 3 hours after the webinar.
Everyone's saying thanks. Solid Gold, lost audio. Sorry about that. But hey, you'll have it on this. As always, incredibly generous. Thanks to everybody. Hey, thanks everyone. Really appreciate your time. And Leanne, thank you for joining us. And we will see you next week.